Sure, you can talk to that.
So this is going to be the kit that you need for most of our Moster 185 carburetors, which is the K10 WB. You can get it from now they've actually dropped the prices, so you can get it for about $10 from about anywhere, e-replacement parts, Cosmic Carts, which is a kart racing site, or most of the paramotor sites as well. All right, what I like to do is I only like to rebuild one side at a time. If you're not sure about the orientation of everything as far as the diaphragms and gaskets and everything, because that way it's a whole lot harder to mess things up. But this is a new carburetor, so we're not really going to replace anything in it. We're just going to check the pop-off pressure and just go through what the rebuild procedure would be. All right. There we go. So you have to be careful taking this side off, because you'll have this little thing right here, and that can be broken off. And if it is, then it's not going to work. It's not going to actually activate this arm right here if that can't latch into it, because that little top is popped off. So you got to make sure that's good in there, but some of them will pop off. And then if you take these kits off, on this side the gasket will go on the body, and then I'm not going to peel them apart, but these two parts actually come apart, and they'll be separate in your kit. But you notice that little matching hole right there is or that matching tip right there should put them in the right direction. So your only issue on this side is to make sure that this diaphragm goes second after the gasket. Gasket will go first. And I just lay that like that. If they were old, go and build the whole carburetor, and then I can pull the parts out of the kit and put them back in the order that the old equipment is in. So now you also have a screen that can be just cleaned. Sometimes the kits will have a replacement in it. There we go. Nothing under here needs to be taken care of or handled, and we'll come back to this piece right here. But just so you know, there's your high screw, there's your low screw sitting in there. You can see those inside. So what I will normally do is mark where my settings are. On a full rebuild, I'll take these two out so I can completely blow back everything. Sometimes this will wear in here, so you'll need to replace the actual needle itself, but I mean, you're going to have to put several hundred hours before you ever have to worry about anything like that. And then this is going to be the pop-off lever and the spring, and the little plunger under there will take off in a second. So, more parts that'll come in your kit. You see this little guy right here? And normally there's a little flapper under this one that is not on this build. Why? I don't know, if maybe they figured it isn't needed. But if I'm going to be putting this back together, see, this could go on. Some of them have multiple ones of these, but what you're going to want to look at is this little guy right here. See how it has the two little holes right there? There's one of them that just has the one hole and the little arm that just goes like to there. So what's under the screwdriver isn't there. And if you don't get the right one on there, then if you get the wrong one on there, then this is actually a channel for fuel between, I want to say right between here, between your low screw, between your low and right here. So if you don't have that little channel in there, then guess what? Your fuel's not going to flow. So you're not going to get the right operation out of your carburetor if it even runs at all. Again, I'm going to take these, I'm going to place them down over here in the exact fitment they came off. Now some kits will have, and you can see in here, there's a little spring ring right in here, and there's a washer in there. So you can pop this out, or not washer, there's a little screen in here and a little pop spring. Some of these you can pop out. Well, this is the big one, but that little one. So some of these, yeah, there's a little pop ring right there. So this screen will come out, but the issue is, if you don't have to mess with it, don't. It's metal, and a good blow through with some carb cleaner will take everything off of there, and you'll be fine, and you don't have to worry about trying to lose the screens or scratch anything that could change your fuel flow. So as we go back together, we'll check this pop-off pressure, but we're going to take this out here because this would be a normal part. So those two gaskets would be replaced normally, and that diaphragm. Then this little lever here, along with this arm, not the spring, but I'll take the spring out. But this little guy right here, this is the plunger I was talking about. Now, this one also comes in your kit, but what'll happen is, this is when your fuel pops off, this opens up, and then when it gets down to pressure, this drops back down and closes off your jet between high and low jet. Now, this little area here will wear down, so that's why you want to replace it whenever you rebuild, because this can cause fuel bleed and you won't get the right transitions between your high and low for your mid-range.
The screw or the spring to replace it, that's the actual part.
That's for the spring for the pop-off pressure, if you need it. Ah, we fell!
Let's try it again.
Botched landing. So, if you can see in here, down in the bottom of here, that little brass ring in there, that is where your plunger seals. And if you feel it, it's actually, the tip is a hard like rubber material, and that's why it'll wear. It's sacrificial for the brass fitting, and the brass fitting gives it a tighter seal. So when you're going back together, what I would normally do on a rebuild is take all of this off, take the whole other side off. I got my parts laid out. And then I would literally blow carb cleaner through every single port on the carburetor to clean it. I do that once a year, whether it needs it or not, just to make sure that there's no little particulate caught up in there. But now going together for this side, you've got to make sure.
And don't bend or stretch the springs or these pieces. You'll affect the carb's performance.
Yeah, you want to be careful with this. This is real thin aluminum, this little portion right here. This little thing is aluminum, and it bends really easy. It is actually used in helping you tune the carburetor, and it doesn't take a lot. It's made to bend for that purpose, and it'll actually bend very easily. So the fun part, now this one hopefully shouldn't need to be adjusted. And you see, you want to make sure you get this up under that plunger. And then what I do is push this over till it all drops in. And then hold everything down. And then you get your screw. Now this is, again, this carburetor is all, if you haven't ever worked on a motor especially, this carburetor is all aluminum. So do not fight your screws. If they don't go in and they don't thread straight in the beginning, then get a different angle, check the threads, make sure you got the right screw, clean those threads out, but do not force it because you can strip a screw very easily. Now what I did, based off one of the websites that has a lot of car building stuff, Sky Sports or something like that, I forget which one, I can't be honest with you because other than I don't know which one, is I went out and got a Chinese Phillips, which has more of a rounded tip. All of our carburetors are made in China, and they actually don't use U.S. screws. So it has a more rounded tip, and it fits in the screws on our carburetors so much better and so much more securely. Okay, so we've got this done. We're going to do a pop-off pressure. And what I'm going to do for that is, so we've got this out. Now, this one is not vented. Oh, no, this one is vented, so you have to make sure that you hold that plugged. So I'm going to put this into the fuel, and then I'm going to plug the other one. And what you want to do is, I use WD-40. You can use gas. Some people put this in a little tub of gas. But what you're trying to do is, here, hold it up some so I don't get oil on it.
That's okay.
What you're trying to do is you need to get something that has a little bit of oil in it, petroleum in it, so it'll seal that piston or that plunger down at the bottom. And I like to fill it up. And we're not going to get to see this part other than the gauge, because if we get to see it, then you get a face full, which is the camera's lens, of oil when this thing pops up and sprays out the pressure. So you want somebody to hold it over this, but don't let it lay on this, because if it touches this, then it could pop the pressure off. So you can just like, okay, well, that's going to spray the camera.
It doesn't matter.
Okay. So then,
I just don't want to spray it in your face.
okay.
Let's see.
So here, about like, there we go. So now, if you watch this, you're going to slowly, now these cost about $20 to $30. You get a decent one. And what you want to do, this is where it's going to settle. It should settle down to about here. But you want it to pop off depending on altitude, depending on your specific carb, load, setup and everything. Somewhere between 16 to 18 PSI, it should pop off. So see, this one's going up to almost 18. So it's on the high side. We could actually cut just one little tip off that. See, it's ending a little high. So what we're going to do is open this up a little bit again, and we're going to...
Did the metering level measure already?
Huh?
Did you?
We haven't measured the meeting. We're just measuring the pop off. That'll measure when. Okay. So what we're going to do for this, and this is usually the only adjustment you need to make on a new one, is we're going to take off as small a piece. Now, I have a small set of cutters, and I'm going to cut off the smallest piece I can and measure it again and see if it measures right. But it's popping off between 18 and 19, which is a little high, which will give it a really hard mid-range. Because what happens, the pressure is building with the throttle. It's building with the fuel flowing through, the air flowing through. And it's not going to transition to mid-range. So you're getting into a low fuel situation when you're getting up there and it's not popping off and transitioning over to the high screw, and it's going to lean you out because you got low fuel, and you're going to suffer performance until it jumps into the mid-range. So you want that to get closer to the capacity for the low range screw and the high screw, so when it pops, that transition will be a smoother move. Let me see, where did There we go. All right. So, I'm going to get my light too, because my eyes stink. So, I'm going to see where this thing goes. And I'm going to try to take off just one.
without stretching the rest of the spring.
Oh, come out here. I could take that one out so I can get to it. Now that I can. There's where I want to cut it. Cut already. Oh, no, I don't want to take off 2 or 3. I'm going to have to use bigger cutters. Those are, I don't know if they got a little dull spot on them or what, but there we go. So see, I got just 1 ring off of there. So now we'll go back. And this won't matter if it's not exactly perfect on the edge. It won't matter. I mean, you don't want it like straightened out this way, but you put that bottom down. Whoop, let me get this off so I can. So you just put this bottom side down in there, and it's not going to interact with anything. It's not going to sit anything off center. It's going to bounce around a little bit. If you don't have a spare, make sure you do not lose this spring because your carb won't work. Come on. Sometimes it likes to play, sometimes it doesn't. All right, there we go. And then bring this back around. Say I like to push it on over to this side first, so I can. Well, actually, I like to take the screw out first because it's easier to work with. Then get that under there. And this just goes down and locks in. You don't have to worry about making it. I mean, you don't want to strip it, but you just take it down until it stops securely. You don't have to worry it because it's not pressing on this. It's just holding in that spring. So now we'll do the same exact thing again. So we'll fill this up. I'll put my...
Yeah, you got glasses on, so you're okay.
I'll put my finger on this.
Notice how he lets the bubbles go down.
Yeah, absolutely. Let the bubbles go down so it seals and everything in there. Yeah, hold like that. All right. And we should have had a little bit of a decrease on this. Now, what I have my thumb on the other side is not all carburetors will have that. It's a vent tube. If your carburetor has a tube that goes down into your crankcase, that connects to the side of the carburetor and your crank and then to your crankcase, you have to cover that with your thumb because it, like, if I take it off, it won't. It'll just bleed. But you have to cover that with something. See, right there, we're about 16, 5, 16, maybe 17. So we're doing good there. We're right where we want to be. Again, you can tune it as much as you want, but a good range is at 16 to 18. I find for my setup, my altitude, I fly at about 400 feet, 300 to 400 feet average altitude at takeoff. That my best performance is about 17. So this one's going to be right there, maybe a little bit low. Once it works in, you're lower. There's not really anything you can adjust for the low side of that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't know everything on it, but the most important part is where it pops off and that it doesn't drop down to like 3 or 4. I mean, it shouldn't just go away. It should seal relatively quick. But we got a good pop off, which is going to be your transition from low into mid-range and high.
And what do you want it to rest at?
You'd like it to rest at about 10 to 11 range. Now, when you put this back on, you want to make sure that you get that back up in there. So if you don't have this gasket on there, you can sort of hold it. I fold it in half and sort of hook it, but like this. Just make sure you're pushing that down and that you're sliding it in. And see, like there, I'm hooked. So now I can worry about just moving, making sure it stays hooked, and getting all of this on these 2 little nubs. And now we're locked in. But we didn't put the whole thing together because Todd's sitting over here and just ignoring life in general. So we would get the new gaskets out. We'd put the new gasket in. We'd put this in. There we go.
When do you want to check the metering?
I check it every time I rebuild the carburetor, but
When do you do that, though?
I usually
With
do
the
that once a
gauge?
year.
No, like in the process.
Oh, meter? I mean, when you're rebuilding this side, I mean, you obviously have to have the whole carburetor together. So, I mean, I like to do it in the beginning, and then I just continue with my rebuild because I'm in this side, and I've replaced my arm, I've replaced my my plunger, I've checked my spring. Now you get one of these for like $5 or $6. This is a WB carburetor, so what you do, you find if you're a WTA, WA, WT, SDC, these are for like all the different Walbro carburetors. Down here is all the listings. The only one you care about is a WB if that's the one you're on. Now the goal is this arm right here. You want this arm to be touching that, and you can see that it's nowhere near touching that. Now, this is where that part comes in because it's very bendable. And it's very easy. Now, it could have been like that, and then again, I was pretty careful with it. I don't believe it got bent by me, and what you want to do is get here until it's just touching it and it's not moving. So that's looking like it's about perfect there. I don't see any light. Yeah, it's almost, it's what I usually do is go this way and see if it hits the edge, and you want it flush here.
Yeah, looks good.
And that's pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much there. So you see how much, I mean, there was a huge gap in there. So that's going to affect how every little bit of that affects its performance. So now we've got that side back together. Again, push that out. Make sure your 2 alignment holes are in the right orientation. If these apart, if they fall off or whatever, gasket goes on first on this side, then the diaphragm. So you're going to aim to get that in there. There we go. See? You can see up in there. We're hooked in it. And now we can put this down. Make sure those are set. This is only going to go on one way as well. And now we can put these 4 in here. Now, you can put thread locker or something on these. Thread locker doesn't really work super with gas all the time. It's not like it's going to cause any issues. It just doesn't really work in my experience. But I've also never had an experience with any of these screws coming out. Not saying it couldn't happen. One thing that I tend to do in my carburetor is when I rebuild it, I'll use some torque check on them on the outside here so I can see if they've been moving. But that provides enough, and that works with gas, that provides enough of a lock to the screws that you shouldn't have any problems with it. Okay, so this side is done, and all the adjustments on this side that could be made have been made. So now we go over to this side. This is what I was talking about. Like on my carburetor, this is plugged with a brass plug, so they don't use this.
It's an external pulse port.
Yes, and
some of them have an internal pulse port.
Right. If you have to use this, or if you have this, you have to cover that.
Wouldn't you still cover it on the internal pulse port too, though?
No, because it's already covered. It's got a brass plug in there.
I mean, but it's moved to inside.
But it's inside the chamber.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not in the middle or anything. It's not in the throat. All right. Same process as the other side. You guys see all that? And then I would blow all this off, clean it up real good, place it down just the way I took it off. Now you see on this side, the diaphragm comes up first. I mean, the diaphragm goes on first, then you have the gasket. So, and then you also notice on the gasket, there's going to be some plastic flaps, some little, well, plastic, little flaps on there. So you want to make sure all of that is in the right orientation. When you rebuild it, you be careful with, I'm going to be careful with this because I'm not going to be replacing this. I don't even know if this carburetor's had gas in it. Now, again, these two parts will come apart, but I'm not going to mess with it because it's bonded with this, and I could end up tearing off some of this. That being said, it's going to come in 2 separate parts in your kit. So you've got this one, and you've got this one, and you've got this one. This one is for use with ethanol gas. So if you use gas with ethanol, you should put this one in it because it resists deterioration like this one. After a year, this will get real soft and stretch and loose, and it won't provide the same performance as it will when it's new. This will last longer with ethanol fuel. Since I rebuild my carb every year, I haven't had any problem with it, but I still normally use this one. Even before I did that, I didn't have any problem when I just used this one. Another part you'll see in here is this bigger screen, and that's going to be on this part. So I'm going to take these, I'm going to put those right there. Now, on this side is this screen. And the way you get this screen out is just push down, and it'll come up just like that. So, and then you see down in there, that's where it goes. This, again, sometimes I've taken this out and this will catch a lot of crap. This is one of the first places because your fuel is coming in right here. And then it goes through, and this is one of the, and it comes through here and comes into here before it goes into the rest of the carb. So this, if you're having problems slowly creeping up on your carb, or even an overnight sort of thing, this is one of the first places I check is take off this side, because that filter is pretty much your last stop in your chain of filters for the whole system.
And every one of those holes you're going to want to blow out with carb cleaner, WD-40, something like that.
Yeah, normally when I rebuild it, I'll take both sides out, and again, like I said, I'll take this out, both jets, and I will put the hose into every single hole in both directions and blow everything out of this thing. So you get your new one, your new little filter. All you do is you get it lined up in there, and you take a pencil eraser, something that size, Let's see if this will work. Nope, that's not going to quite, so I'm going to have to get the right tool for it. Oh, that's even bigger.
What about
This should work. Nope. Nope. Maybe. Maybe. And all you do is push it down in there like that. It's just held in by tension. So, all good. But a pencil eraser will help it from slipping or sliding left, right, whatever. And then all you're going to do on this side is put your diaphragm first. Remember, the other side goes like this. Gasket first, then the diaphragm. On this side, the diaphragm goes first, and then the gasket. And these are what I was talking about. These little flaps right here, see, they cover these holes, and they're going to pop and let fuel go one way. So those you need to make sure are in the right orientation, that you have the right one. If you have the wrong kit, for whatever reason, put this back together, and either A, you're not going to fly, or B, you're going to have as good of improvement as you could from everything else that you've done until you get a new kit, and then go in and replace this. And then you just go back together with everything exactly the way it was. And same thing on this side. I don't use any thread lock on mine. I'll put cross check on mine, and that holds really good. That being said, the next year when I replace it or rebuild it, I make myself a little jar with gas, or usually with my carb cleaner in there, and I soak the screws and the two end cases with it to take off. I let them soak while I'm cleaning the rest of the carb, and then I can wipe off, maybe with a green scrub pad a little bit. I can get the old cross check, torque check off, and then once it's all dry and everything and back together and good, I can put a new dab of torque check on each of the screws, and that holds it and lets me see if any of my screws are coming done without having to retorque stuff, which can wear out the holes and the threads over time and cause you to lose screws. Other than that, there's not a whole lot you can do. One thing that not a lot of people realize, even dealers have told friends of mine that they have to buy a whole new carb for, is this spring can wear out. I'm actually fixing to replace mine in a while. I've got to order one. Oh no, I actually may have one, but that spring right there controls this. And this one, it's got a lot of kick to it. Mine doesn't have as much, but next time I rebuild it, about 2.5, 3 months, I'm going to replace that. This, they say, can't be replaced, but it can. So, you've got to take this off, that little snap ring right there. Then, you have to take out, I'm not going to take it out because I'm not going to take the snap ring off. And when you take it, and it is important to know because this valve needs to go in a certain way. You see how it's got towards the fuel intake side? It's got those two nipples on it, and they're going into the carb. So what you do with this is you open this up, and you might have to wiggle. Once you take this off, you might have to wiggle back and forth a little bit to get this set to come out. And that's it. So you take this off, there's a rubber gasket in there, and there's an O-ring up in here, and you just pull this out. And then you put the spring back. Make sure you take a video or a picture of it. You see how it's locked on this side of the throttle the idle adjustment screw, and the other end, the outside end, locks on here, and that is your throttle return. So that easy. And then going back would be the same. You can buy a whole new one of these, I think, for about 15 bucks, but that spring is like $2. So you go back with this. Again, you see these nubs.
Something to note, a lot of people think they have a Walbro 37, which is what you're looking at. This is a Walbro 37 carburetor. What I found is that most Aussies don't use a Walbro 37. They actually use a Walbro 32, and the difference is in the venturi from this point to this point on the inside is either 25 millimeters or 27 millimeters. 27 is what's in the Walbro 37, and 25 is what's in the Walbro 32. Obviously, the larger your Venturi, the more mix of air-fuel can flow, and you'll get better performance. A Walbro 37 is much better than a 32.
Okay. So again, make sure these are going on the right side. You see the dimples on them. And like I say, you just have to there we go, get that right. Oh. But yes, so you can replace that spring on the throttle return as well if it gets weak over time. There you go. That is everything as far as the cleaning of the carburetor for the Moster 1.
You want to set it for the
85.
You want to set it?
Okay, yeah. So since this one isn't really set, we can go ahead and take these out and let you look at them as well. But because like I say, normally I would take these out all the way and blow out literally the whole carburetor to make sure everything is clean. And plus you can get wear on the end here, so eventually if you need to, you can replace these. Now the low screw is right here.
And don't over tighten them.
Yeah, definitely do not over tighten them. You can crush the seals inside, and you can tear up the end of this, which will that tip at the end, which will mess up your settings. Same thing there. And the seats are down in there.
They have a nice sharp point on them.
So all you do with this is turn this in all the way. And when it hits, it hits. So don't try to force it like a regular screw. I can probably get this in, not when it's all hot, but right now I can probably do it with my fingers, and that way I'm not going to mess up the end. Okay, well, I don't know if it's in all the way, but it stopped turning now. I mean, it took the whole spring. So a quarter to a third out is stock for this. So right here, we'll start at a quarter, which is the low side, and then we'll move just a little bit more to the third, and that'll make it in a rich situation that we can always tune back from. That'll be the safer position. Then we follow the exact same process for the high, and be careful again, it's all aluminum for the purpose of not being reactive with fuel and not sort of like burning up on the back of your carburetor, on the back of your back. So a lot of this stuff is fragile if you over tighten it. What is this, 1 1/4 out?
Yeah.
To 1 1/2?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going to turn this out. So right there we're in all the way. Now, on my carburetor, I just have a hole through here. So I take a small nail, if you have that set up, and you stick that nail like a picture hanging nail. I stick that through there, and then I use that just when I'm changing it. I don't leave it there, obviously, because it would fly out, but I use that to make this easier to turn. But you can go to Lowe's, and I'm gonna do that the next time I rebuild it. I'm gonna take this out, and I'm gonna go to Lowe's, and you can get one of these pressure fit in the auto parts section of the screws, nuts, and bolts, everything aisle, the custom parts in the drawers. And I'm going to get one of these. All it is a tube that has a slit down one side, and you squeeze it easily with a pair of pliers to compress it enough it fits through that hole and let go, and it opens back up, and then it won't come out. And that makes it so much easier to adjust, because this is going to, once you get this low one set, This one is going to be the only one you really mess with if you mess with it at all. But like if you go, when we go to like moonshiners in Tennessee, we're taking off at an altitude, density altitude of about 3,000 to 4,000 feet, depending on the weather. So we want to tweak ours a little bit. I mean, at least I do, to get a little better run up, because if not, you're already running further because of the altitude, but you don't want to run any further because of your power. So this, we're in all the way. That's where all your measurements start. So we're going to go right here, and it's sitting there. So we're going to go, that's a half a turn, that's 1 turn, and that's a half a turn. So we are out at the far end, one and a quarter to 1.5 turns out. So we're at the rich side. Once the carburetor goes on, somebody's going to have to tune it, but it will start and it will run, and then they can tweak, and you start with your low screw and get that right, which is more detail to go into than this video. But once you get that one right with your mid-range, the pop-off, then all your fine tuning is done with your high screw to finish everything up and get it just right.
And your idle screw.
And then your idle, yes. Again, that would be on a different video, but this, your low screw, is what actually you adjust your idle with, and then you fine tune it with this. This is not meant to be the fix-all, end-all, be-all to your idle adjustment. If your idle's not right, sometimes you'll have to turn this all the way in just to get it to idle. It's because your low screw is off. You got to back this all the way out, forget about it, and get it running and started with this one. Then you can tweak your idle to get it right. But again, completely different video. That's more tuning. This is just getting, the only reason it had tuning in this one with your pop-off is because it's something that you can check when you're already in the carburetor anyway doing a rebuild. So that is it. This one's ready to put on a motor and get out there and get it running up and try to tune it in and dial it up. Dial it in.
Thank you, Jay Everts, for your expertise and showing us how to go through cleaning the Walbro 37. Thank you, everyone. Bye.